The dust motes danced in the single beam of afternoon light slicing through the attic grime. It smelled up here like forgotten things, old paper, dried wood, the faint ghost of mothballs. I shifted a stack of photo albums, their corners softened with time, and my hand brushed against cool, smooth wood. Curious, I pulled it out. The little ballerina music box. I hadn't seen it in decades. Walnut, inlaid with mother of pearl, a bit scratched now but still holding its quiet elegance. I wound the tiny key on the bottom, the mechanism stiff but willing. The first hesitant notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune tinkled out, fragile and sweet in the dusty air. Our song. I'd given it to Olivia, my wife, on our second anniversary, long before the kids, the mortgage, the comfortable silence that had settled between us like a layer of silt. A smile touched my lips, a genuine one, rare these days. I carried it downstairs, planning to surprise her, maybe spark a flicker of the old connection. Olivia was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, a slight frown etching lines between her brows. "Look what I found," I said, holding it out. She glanced up, her eyes flicking over the box with an odd lack of recognition, or perhaps something else entirely. Indifference. "Oh, that," she said, her tone flat. She didn't reach for it. "Thought we tossed that years ago." The music box felt suddenly heavy in my hand. "Tossed it? Liv, this was—" I trailed off. How could she forget? I remembered the little gasp of delight when she first opened it, how she'd kept it on her bedside table for years. "It still plays," I added, turning the key again, letting the melody fill the space between us. Olivia didn't look up from her phone. Battery must still be good." "It's wind-up, Liv," I said quietly. The music box didn't run on batteries. It ran on memory, on shared history, things she seemed determined to misplace. "Right," she murmured, tapping something on her screen. "Well, put it somewhere, will you? It's just clutter." Clutter. The word landed like a stone in my gut. This small, intricate box, a symbol of our beginning, reduced to clutter. I stood there, the music slowly winding down, the silence rushing back in, thicker than before. It wasn't just the music box she was dismissing. The look on her face wasn't forgetfulness. It was a deliberate shutting down, a closing off. It was the same look she'd had lately when I tried to talk about anything deeper than schedules or bills. The same vague answers about late nights at the office, the quick way she'd angle her phone screen away if I walked into the room unexpectedly. I'd been telling myself it was stress, the demands of her job, the inevitable weariness of a 20-year marriage. But standing there, holding that small wooden box, a colder, sharper possibility began to crystallize in my mind. What if it wasn't just weariness? What if it was an ending she hadn't bothered to announce? The music stopped completely, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the heavy beat of my own heart. I placed the box gently on the counter, the polished wood feeling cold beneath my fingers. Olivia sighed, finally pocketing her phone, but she didn't meet my eyes. "I need to run out for a bit," she said, grabbing her keys. "Forgot I promised to help Carol with something." Another errand, another vague explanation. It felt like I was standing on shifting ground, the foundation I thought was solid, suddenly feeling precarious beneath my feet. As the front door clicked shut behind her, the silence in the kitchen felt immense, amplified by the ticking clock on the wall. I looked down at the music box again. Clutter. My hand traced the inlaid pearl, the smooth curve of the wood. It wasn't just the box, was it? It was us. Our history, our connection, reduced to something inconvenient, something to be put away and ignored. The excuse about Carol felt thin, translucent. Olivia didn't have a close friend named Carol that I knew of, not one she'd drop everything for on a weekday afternoon. There was a Caroline from her book club, maybe, but she always called her Caroline. The vagueness wasn't accidental. It felt practiced. My gaze drifted to her coffee mug, still half full on the counter. A smear of lipstick, a shade darker than she usually wore, marked the rim. Beside it lay her tablet, the one she used for work emails late at night. An impulse, sharp and unwelcome, pricked at me. Check it, see the call logs, the messages, find out who Carol really is. I reached out, my fingers hovering over the cool glass screen, my heart hammered against my ribs. This felt like crossing a line, a violation of the trust that was already fraying thin. But hadn't she crossed it first? With the dismissive wave of her hand, the casual disregard for something that held so much shared meaning? Or maybe I was imagining things, letting one cold comment spiral into unfounded suspicion. Maybe she was just stressed, overwhelmed, forgetful. Maybe the Carol excuse was just a clumsy shorthand for something else entirely mundane. I pulled my hand back, clenching it into a fist. No, snooping wasn't the answer. Not yet. It felt desperate beneath the man I wanted to be, the husband I had tried to be. But the unease didn't dissipate. It settled deeper, a cold knot in my stomach. I walked into the living room, the house feeling too large, too quiet. Our wedding photo sat on the mantelpiece. Olivia and I, 20 years younger, radiating a naive certainty about the future. Her eyes in the photo met mine directly, full of warmth, full of promise. Where had that woman gone? When had the light in her eyes been replaced by that guarded, distant look? I thought back over the past few months, the increasing frequency of work dinners that stretched late into the night, the hushed phone calls she'd take out on the patio, ending abruptly if I walked nearby, the way she'd started meticulously clearing her browser history, something she'd never bothered with before. Each incident, taken alone, could be explained away. Stress, privacy, a demanding job. But woven together, they formed a pattern, a narrative I couldn't ignore any longer. The music box wasn't the cause, it was just the final, undeniable note in a song that had been playing softly in the background for months. A song of detachment, of secrets I needed to know, not out of malice, not for revenge, but because the uncertainty was eating me alive. Living in this limbo, constantly questioning, second-guessing my own perceptions, was unbearable. If our marriage was truly over, if she had already moved on, I deserved to know. I couldn't fix something if I didn't understand what was broken. Or maybe, the cold thought surfaced, it was already shattered beyond repair, and I was the only one still trying to hold the pieces together. My gaze fell on the keys hanging by the door, her car keys, forgotten on the hook in her haste to leave. Another small anomaly. Olivia never forgot her keys. She had a routine, a mental checklist she ran through before walking out the door. Purse, phone, keys, always. I picked them up, the metal cool against my palm. She couldn't have gotten far without them. She must have realized by now would be turning back any second. Or she wasn't driving her own car. The thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. Who was she with? Where was she really going? Standing there, keys in hand, the house silent around me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to snoop through her tablet. I wasn't going to confront her with half-formed suspicions that she could easily deny or twist. I was going to see for myself. I grabbed my own keys, my jacket. My hands were steady, but inside a storm was brewing. I walked out to my car, the familiar weight of dread mixing with a grim sense of purpose. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know what I would find, but I knew I couldn't stay here, waiting in the quiet wreckage of what used to be our life, pretending not to hear the music fading away. I needed the truth, no matter how much it cost. I pulled out of the driveway, scanning the street. Her car was gone. She must have come back for the keys while I was in the living room, or perhaps she hadn't taken her car at all. Which direction? Downtown, towards her office, or somewhere else? I took a guess, heading towards the newer part of town, the area with the boutique hotels and trendy restaurants she sometimes mentioned in passing after those work dinners. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Every passing car made my pulse jump. Was that her? Was she in there? The city felt alien, hostile, every street corner a potential stage for a discovery I wasn't sure I could handle. But I kept driving, propelled by a need that overshadowed fear. I ended up circling the block around the Sterling Hotel, one of the places she'd mentioned attending a conference reception a few weeks back. It felt like a long shot, grasping at straws. As I rounded the corner for the third time, a car pulled out from the underground parking garage. A sleek, dark sedan I didn't recognize. And then I saw her, in the passenger seat, laughing at something the driver said. Her head was tilted back slightly, a gesture so familiar it ached. The driver was a man, his profile sharp, confident. He reached over, his hand briefly touching her arm, a casual intimacy that sent a jolt through me. It wasn't Carol. It wasn't a work colleague I recognized. It was a stranger, sharing a private moment with my wife in a car I'd never seen, pulling away from a hotel where she claimed to have attended a reception weeks ago. They turned left at the intersection, heading away from the direction of our home, away from anything related to her job or the life we shared. I followed, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm against my ribs. The music box sat on the passenger seat beside me, a silent, accusing witness. Its melody, once sweet, now felt like a dirge. Each note was a reminder of the trust I'd placed, the future I'd believed in, the woman I thought I knew. And as I trailed them through the late afternoon traffic, a single, cold certainty settled over me. This wasn't just clutter, it was the end. The carefully constructed world I inhabited was fracturing, the floor dropping out from under me, and all I could do was watch it happen, following the taillights that carried away the last vestiges of my denial. The certainty felt hollow, empty. Following them felt surreal, like watching a movie scene unfold from the wrong side of the screen. My own car seemed too loud, the engine's hum an intrusion on the numb bubble that had enveloped me. Traffic flowed around us, horns honked, people went about their afternoon routines, completely oblivious to the quiet demolition happening in the car, trailing the dark sedan. Each red light was a small torture, forcing me to stop, to watch them waiting just ahead. Olivia would sometimes glance at her side mirror, adjust her hair, completely unaware of who was behind her. The man beside her drove easily, one hand on the wheel, sometimes turning to speak to her. From this distance, I couldn't read his expression, but his posture radiated a casual ownership that made my stomach clench. My mind kept replaying Olivia's words from earlier. Clutter. Put it somewhere. The music box on the seat beside me seemed to pulse with a faint energy, a repository of discarded memories. How long had this been going on? The hotel reception weeks ago, was that the start? Or just one stop along a well-worn path? The late nights suddenly made a sickening kind of sense. The work trips that required minimal packing, the sudden need for privacy when taking calls. Each lie, each evasion clicked into place like tumblers in a lock, revealing a hidden chamber in our marriage I hadn't known existed. I remembered her telling me, just last month, how overwhelmed she was at work, how the pressure was immense. I'd offered support, suggested she cut back, take a vacation. She'd brushed it off, saying it was just a phase that she needed to push through. Was this her way of pushing through? Finding solace, excitement, whatever it was she wasn't finding with me, in the arms of this stranger? The sedan signaled, turning off the main road into a quiet, residential neighborhood. Tree-lined streets, established houses, mixed with newer builds. It wasn't an area I recognized, certainly not near any of Olivia's supposed work contacts or friends. They drove slowly now, finally pulling into the driveway of a modest, well-kept brick house. It looked ordinary, unremarkable, like dozens of others on the street. There was nothing to suggest it was a stage for betrayal, except for the fact that my wife was stepping out of a stranger's car in its driveway. I pulled over to the curb a block away, parking under the shade of a large oak tree, partially obscured but with a clear view. My breath hitched as I watched them. He got out first, then walked around to open her door, a gentlemanly gesture that felt obscene under the circumstances. Olivia stepped out, smoothing down her dress. They stood there for a moment, talking quietly. He touched her cheek, a brief, possessive caress. She leaned into it just for a second, before pulling back slightly, glancing around the quiet street as if suddenly aware of potential observers. Too late. Then he took out a key, unlocked the front door, and held it open for her. She hesitated for only a fraction of a second before stepping inside. He followed, pulling the door closed behind them. Just like that. Effortless. Practiced. Like coming home. I sat there, engine off, the silence in my car deafening. The music box lay still on the seat. The sun slanted through the windshield, warming the dashboard, but I felt cold, chilled to the bone. There was no confrontation, no yelling, no dramatic scene, just the quiet, devastating confirmation of everything I had feared. They walked into that house together, into a life I had no part in, and the door closed, shutting me out completely. It wasn't just a hotel room, it was a place, a routine, a parallel existence she had built. My hands gripped the steering wheel. What now? Did I storm up to the door? Did I sit here and wait? Did I drive away and pretend I hadn't seen? The image of them disappearing inside burned behind my eyelids. The casual intimacy, the shared destination, the closed door. It spoke volumes more than any tearful confession or angry denial ever could. I thought of our children, their faces oblivious, back at home in the life I was supposed to be protecting. How could I go back there now knowing this? How could I look at her across the dinner table, listen to her fabricated stories about her day, knowing where she had really been, who she had really been with? The foundation hadn't just cracked, it had crumbled into dust. There was nothing left to salvage, nothing to rebuild. There was only the stark reality of that closed door and the hollow ache spreading through my chest. I watched the house, unmoving, for what felt like an eternity. No lights came on, no curtains twitched. It remained silent, ordinary, guarding its secrets. The music box sat beside me, a relic from a past that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. I reached over and picked it up, its weight familiar yet foreign. I turned the key one last time, the mechanism protesting slightly. The first fragile notes of Claire de Lune filled the car, achingly beautiful and utterly heartbreaking. The melody played, each note a pinpoint of pain against the vast silence. They were in there, together. The music wound down, slower this time, until the last note hung in the air, then faded. Gone. Just gone. I put the car in drive, my movements feeling automatic, detached. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay here, watching that closed door. Couldn't go back to the house that was no longer a home. The hollowness inside felt vast, echoing, utterly empty. I drove without direction, the streets blurring into meaningless lines and colors. Stop signs, traffic lights, merging lanes. I navigated them on autopilot, my conscious mind reeling from the image of that closing door. Each car that passed felt like an accusation, every ordinary house a reminder of the life I thought I had, the life that had just been exposed as a facade. The hollowness inside wasn't empty. It was filled with a roaring silence, the echoes of 20 years of shared laughter, whispered secrets, and quiet promises, all rendered meaningless in an instant. Olivia's face floated in my mind, not the laughing face in the stranger's car, but the face from our wedding day, earnest and bright. Then the face from countless family vacations, tired but happy. The face bending over our children's beds at night. How did that woman become the one who walked into a stranger's house without a backward glance? How could she stand beside me just hours ago, dismissing a shared memory as clutter, knowing this other life waited for her? The betrayal wasn't just the physical act, it was the years of deception that must have preceded it, the countless moments where she must have looked at me, smiled, talked about her day, all while harboring this secret, this fundamental lie. It felt like erasure. My role, my presence in her life, apparently insignificant enough to be compartmentalized, hidden away, perhaps even pitied. The music box on the passenger seat felt like a ticking bomb. I couldn't stand looking at it. I pulled over abruptly onto a deserted side street, the tires crunching on loose gravel. With jerky movements, I grabbed the box. My first instinct was to hurl it out the window, shatter it against the pavement, destroy the tangible proof of a love that was now a lie. But my hand froze. Smashing it felt too violent, too much like mirroring the destruction she had wrought. It wouldn't undo anything. It wouldn't bring back the woman I thought I'd married. Instead, I opened the glove compartment and shoved it inside, burying it beneath old maps and insurance papers. Out of sight. Like her secrets had been. Like I apparently was to her true self. Closing the compartment felt like closing a coffin lid on the past. I started driving again, aimlessly climbing the winding roads leading out of the city, towards the hills that overlooked the valley. The higher I got, the more the city lights spread out below, a glittering tapestry of lives carrying on, unaware and untouched by my personal earthquake. I finally pulled into a deserted scenic overlook, the air cooler up here, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I got out of the car, leaving the door open, and walked to the low stone wall at the edge. The view was vast, impersonal, thousands of lights, thousands of stories, none of them mine anymore. Or at least, the story I thought was mine had been torn up, rewritten by someone else without my knowledge. The wind picked up, sharp and cold against my face, whipping strands of hair across my eyes. I leaned against the cool stone, the rough texture grounding me for a moment in the physical world, a stark contrast to the internal freefall. What now? Confrontation felt inevitable, but hollow. What could she possibly say? What explanation could bridge the chasm that had opened between us? Legal calls, custody arrangements, dividing assets. The practicalities loomed, monstrous and overwhelming. But beneath the anger, beneath the sense of betrayal, was a profound, aching grief for the life I had lost, for the partner I thought I had, for the future that had vanished in the space of an afternoon. The city lights glittered coldly below, distant and indifferent. I stood there, alone on the overlook, the vastness of the night sky mirroring the emptiness inside. The wind cut sharp against my face, so cold,